You know William Shakespeare, right? The Bard. His timeless plays, his poignant sonnets, his, well, undeniable genius. But what if I told you that behind the towering figure of this literary titan, there was a profound private tragedy? One that might have ignited the spark for one of his most iconic works. This isn't really a story about the playwright's public triumphs, but about the deeply personal realm he left behind. A family shattered by an unbearable loss that reshaped his creative path.
It's a fascinating premise, isn't it? We're about to get into Maggie O'Farrell's acclaimed 2020 historical fiction novel, Hamnet. And just so you know, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's Notebook LM for deeper, more dynamic book analysis. This book, Hamnet, it's just this beautifully reimagined narrative that shifts our focus entirely, placing Shakespeare's family life right at its heart. It centers specifically on his wife, Agnes, who history mostly knows as Anne Hathaway, and their son, Hamnet, who tragically died. He was only 11 back in 1596.
Yeah, and our mission today is to truly unpack this richly woven story. We'll be exploring its intimate portrait of grief, love, and the very act of artistic creation. We'll delve into the characters, the pervasive historical context of plague in 16th century England, and crucially how O'Farrell draws this really powerful connection between this devastating personal loss and the genesis of Shakespeare's enduring play, Hamlet. It's a journey that reveals how even the most celebrated art can spring from the deepest, most private sorrow.
Exactly. So, with that poignant introduction to the story's core, let's turn our attention to the unseen lives within this novel. Maggie O'Farrell, she's an acclaimed Irish-born novelist, and Hamnet was her 8th novel. It earned just widespread critical acclaim. She masterfully blends historical and biographical fiction written in this contemporary literary style. It combines lyrical prose with an immersive, present-tense narration. And this choice, you see, it pulls you right into the immediate moment of the story. It makes you feel like you're living it alongside the characters, experiencing their joys and sorrows right as they happen, kind of like the immediacy of a live play.
Right. And at the absolute heart of this narrative is Agnes. She's the novel's central protagonist. And O'Farrell deliberately uses the name Agnes, apparently it was in her father's will, rather than the more commonly known Anne. And the novel paints her as this incredibly complex, almost mystical figure. She possesses these unique characteristics, like a supernatural ability to read futures by touch, premonitions that often trouble her. It gives her this unique, almost burdened perspective on life.
Absolutely. And her connection to the natural world is profound, almost spiritual. She has this extensive knowledge of herbal medicine and healing, a gift inherited from her own mother, who was, well, rumored to have similar abilities. She even keeps a kestrel as a companion, feeling most at home in the untamed forest. This deep bond with nature often makes her an outsider in conventional society, someone viewed with a mix of, awe and suspicion. Yet, ironically, she finds acceptance through her vital role as a healer in her community, indispensable when illness strikes.
So into this world steps the Latin tutor. It's a truly fascinating literary device that Shakespeare is never actually named directly in the novel. He's always referred to as the Latin tutor, the husband, or the playwright. He's portrayed as this restless young man, kind of bubbling with artistic ambitions, often feeling torn between the responsibilities of his growing family and his undeniable, almost magnetic need for creative expression in the wider world. What do you think that naming convention adds?
That's a great question. By never naming him, O'Farrell subtly shifts the focus away from the celebrated public figure we know and onto the private man, the husband, the father, the artist, sort of in nascent form. It really reinforces that this is Agnes's story, told from her perspective, and places the personal domestic sphere into sharp relief. Their courtship, for instance, is far from conventional, mirroring that sense of Agnes's unique perspective. We see their first meeting when he's just 18, working as a Latin tutor for Agnes's brother Bartholomew. Agnes, at 26, is significantly older, which itself would have been pretty unusual for the time.
And despite that age difference, O'Farrell describes an immediate, almost magnetic attraction, doesn't she? Their relationship develops with a startling rapidity. Apparently, when Agnes's stepmother tries to prevent their marriage, well, their relationship is consummated, leading to Agnes's pregnancy. This forces a hurried wedding, which the Latin tutor's father, John Shakespeare, supports, partly to resolve debts he owed to Agnes's deceased father. It gives you a glimpse into the family's financial struggles.
Indeed. After the marriage, Agnes moves into the Shakespeare household on Henley Street. Their first child, Susanna, is born in the forest, following Agnes's mother's unconventional traditions, another nod to her deep connection with nature. Then come the twins, Hamnet and Judith. But Agnes, with her premonitions, she senses something is off. She believes she was meant to have only 2 children, not 3. It's a subtle, deeply unsettling foreshadowing of the tragedy that will soon unfold, a thread woven through her prophetic insights.
Unsettling is right. And this leads us to the critical juncture, the seeds of separation. As the Latin tutor's restlessness and literary ambitions grow, Agnes, with her intuitive understanding of him, recognizes his deep-seated need to escape the confines of Stratford. She initially plans to join him in London after the twins are born, but Judith's frailty ultimately convinces her that the bustling, dangerous city would be too perilous for her weak daughter. This decision, heartbreaking in its practicality, cements the family separation. Shakespeare pursues his theatrical career in London, making only occasional, fleeting visits home. This sets up the critical absence that will define their greatest tragedy.
And that takes us directly into the shadow of plague, and ultimately, Hamnet's sacrifice, the central devastating event of the novel. One of the most powerful elements of O'Farrell's storytelling is its dual timeline structure. She skillfully alternates between the summer of 1596, when Hamnet dies, and 15 years earlier, when his parents first meet. This isn't just a chronological trick, it builds incredible dramatic tension. It allows us to understand the deep love and connection that formed the family, making the eventual loss all the more profound and heartbreaking.
The novel truly opens with a profoundly impactful scene, doesn't it? 11-year-old Hamnet desperately searching for help as his twin sister Judith falls gravely ill. It seems to be bubonic plague. It's a gut-wrenching moment that immediately grips you. Their father is away in London, their mother Agnes is absent, and Hamnet is utterly alone with his sick sister at their grandparents' house. His grandfather, John Shakespeare, a disgraced former bailiff struggling with alcoholism, is utterly unable to help, just paralyzed by his own demons.
It's a truly frantic, almost unbearable search that O'Farrell puts us through. Hamnet discovers the telltale buboes, those painful swellings on Judith's neck. He instantly recognizes the terrifying symptoms of plague sweeping the country. He frantically seeks a physician, but the doctor's unavailable. The woman at his house sends Hamnet away immediately upon hearing the symptoms, just fearing contagion. He returns home defeated, collapsing beside his sister, just overwhelmed by his inability to save her. It's a primal scream of helplessness.
And then Agnes eventually returns to discover the crisis. She immediately begins to use her extensive knowledge of herbal medicine and healing, attempting to treat Judith. But the situation grows increasingly dire. What follows is one of the novel's most mystical and poignant moments. Hamnet, in a supernatural turn that reflects Agnes's own gifts, somehow exchanges places with death itself, sacrificing his own life to save Judith. When Agnes wakes, Hamnet has died, and Judith miraculously survives. This mystical element adds a layer of spiritual depth to the profound loss, suggesting a cosmic exchange rather than just random tragedy.
And this heart-wrenching family tragedy is set against the backdrop of an incredibly detailed historical context of the plague. O'Farrell's narrative meticulously examines how plague affected 16th century English society, illustrating the constant fear and the brutal, indiscriminate nature of the disease. She even includes this remarkable chapter that traces its journey from a glass monkey figurine from Venice through Mediterranean trade routes to eventually reach Stratford. This historical context resonated powerfully, perhaps unexpectedly, with contemporary readers experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic. It makes you realize how interconnected the early modern world truly was, and how human responses to global health crises can echo across centuries.
Absolutely. After Hamnet's death, the novel unflinchingly explores the devastating impact on the family, revealing the vastly different ways people process grief. Agnes retreats into profound, almost catatonic grief, becoming almost unable to perform basic household tasks. She desperately searches for signs of her son's spirit in the natural world, keeping a lock of his hair in a jar above the fireplace, preserving his memory through ritual. Meanwhile, her husband, who arrives too late to see his son alive, finds the house unbearable, a tomb filled with unbearable memories. He quickly returns to London, causing immense tension and Agnes's profound incomprehension of what she sees as his abandonment.
It's an agonizing portrait of two people grieving so differently they can barely understand each other. The separation between them deepens, but crucially, both parents channel their grief into a form of creation, though in vastly different ways. This is where O'Farrell makes her most audacious and profound connection. The husband Shakespeare channels his overwhelming grief into his work. Specifically, he eventually writes the play Hamlet. O'Farrell doesn't just state this. She subtly weaves in moments where his overwhelming sorrow, his search for meaning after Hamlet's death, seems to directly echo the themes of loss, revenge, and existential dread that permeate the play. It's almost as if the very words of Hamlet are forged in the crucible of his private agony, transforming unbearable sorrow into a timeless exploration of the human condition.
And this transformation culminates in the novel's powerful climax, approximately 4 years after Hamnet's death. Agnes learns that her husband has written a play bearing their son's name. Her initial outrage and confusion, her sense of betrayal that he would exploit their shared grief, drive her to travel to London to see the performance at the Globe Theatre. What she experiences there is a truly transformative realization. As she watches the play unfold, she recognizes that her husband has found his own profound way to honor and remember their son through his art. The play becomes a form of resurrection, allowing Hamnet to live on not just in their private memories, but in the collective memory of audiences for centuries to come.
This novel truly drills down into some incredibly powerful key themes. First, loss and grief. It shows how grief is both commonplace in the 16th century, child mortality was tragically common, and yet utterly unique and devastating to each individual family. It suggests that handling grief isn't about avoiding pain, but about finding a way to transcend it through memory and art. Then there's the profound power of love, manifested in romantic love between Agnes and the Latin tutor, parental love, and the selfless, almost primal bond between twins, exemplified by Hamnet's sacrifice for Judith.
And crucially, memory and remembrance. This is a core theme that resonates deeply. The novel suggests that remembrance through art and storytelling can provide a form of immortality. Shakespeare's play Hamlet becomes a profound means of ensuring his son's memory endures beyond the family's personal grief, giving him a different kind of life. It makes you think about how we choose to keep those we've lost alive in our own lives, doesn't it?
Indeed. This novel does so much more than just tell a compelling story. It really challenges our perspectives on history and storytelling. One of its most significant contributions is its powerful feminist reclamation. By centering Agnes's story and giving her agency, O'Farrell challenges the traditional narrative that solely focuses on Shakespeare's public achievements. She highlights the often overlooked domestic sphere that supported him and that often shaped his work. Agnes becomes a powerful representative of historical women whose contributions have been minimized or ignored in official histories.
And this raises an important question about identity and sacrifice. The novel explores identity through twinship, particularly Hamnet's willing, almost mythical sacrifice for Judith. It extends to Agnes's identity as a healer and outsider, navigating a world that both fears and relies on her unique gifts. And then there's the husband's identity as both a family man and an artist, constantly pulled in different directions. There's also the fascinating theme of fate and fortune. Agnes's supernatural foresight introduces questions about destiny versus free will. Despite her gifts, despite her premonitions, she cannot prevent the tragedy, suggesting the profound limits to controlling circumstances, a very human struggle.
And Agnes's deep connection to the natural world is a recurring motif, a profound theme of nature and healing woven throughout the story. Her intuitive knowledge of herbs and the forest is beautifully contrasted with her husband's more formal education, highlighting different forms of knowledge and wisdom. The novel also touches on profound social and philosophical dimensions. We see the very real constraints placed on 16th century women, how their lives were often circumscribed by societal expectations and legal limitations. Yet, through Agnes's agency and her unconventional approach to life, O'Farrell beautifully illustrates how individuals, even then, could subtly challenge and transcend these gender and social expectations.
We also observe class and social mobility through the contrast between Agnes's yeoman farmer background, meaning she comes from a class of independent small landowners, and the Shakespeare family's declining social status, vividly seen through John Shakespeare, the disgraced former bailiff. The novel also explores the tension between artistic calling and family responsibility, particularly through Shakespeare's prolonged absence, raising important questions about the sacrifices made for art and the social responsibility of the artist. Finally, it delves into the rich tapestry of religious and superstitious beliefs of the time, showing how Christian beliefs coexisted with older pagan traditions, with Agnes's practices falling into a gray area that reflects the period's religious anxieties and making her all the more compelling.
From a literary craftsmanship perspective, O'Farrell is just a master. She employs that sophisticated dual timeline structure we mentioned, which doesn't just build dramatic tension but provides rich emotional context. The novel is written primarily in third-person present tense, creating this incredible immediacy, almost mirroring a theatrical performance itself. She frequently shifts perspective between characters, sometimes multiple times within a single chapter, creating an almost cinematic quality, allowing us to see events through multiple eyes. Her prose is noted for its lyrical quality, rich with sensory imagery and powerful symbolism, especially through recurring motifs like birds, nature, and those healing herbs. The critical and commercial success of Hamnet speaks volumes. It won the Women's Prize for Fiction, the National Book Critics Circle Award, and was a New York Times 10 Best Book of 2020. It sold over 1 million copies worldwide and is being adapted for both stage and film. Its publication during the COVID-19 pandemic also gave it an unexpected, powerful contemporary relevance, with readers finding uncanny parallels between the historical plague and their own experiences.
So what does this all mean? Hamnet stands as both a deeply moving family drama and a sophisticated work of historical imagination. It reminds us how profoundly personal tragedy can be transformed into universal art, and how history can be re-examined through a fresh, intimate lens, particularly by centering previously overlooked voices like Agnes. It's truly a significant contribution to both Shakespearean fiction and feminist historical literature, reclaiming a marginalized historical figure and giving Agnes agency and voice.
It absolutely does. It compels you to reconsider what you think you know about historical figures and the sources of their inspiration.
Indeed. Consider this. How often do the untold private stories, the profound losses and intimate loves of everyday life truly shape the public figures and monumental works we celebrate without us ever knowing their full weight? If this discussion has sparked your curiosity, we deeply encourage you to delve into the novel yourself. This has been just a glimpse into its profound depths. You can find more in-depth book analyses like this, inspiring reflection and rational thought, on our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments, and explore our other analyses wherever you get your podcasts. Click the link on screen for the in-depth book analysis. Subscribe, share, purchase via link, and think critically about the narratives that shape our understanding of history